So here's the phrase that we're hearing all the time now. Is that the hill you really want to die on? How many times have we heard that lately? Is that the hill you really want to die on? Yes. I want to die on several hills. First off, I'm not afraid to die. I'm really not. I might change my mind tomorrow, but right now and yesterday, I don't live in fear of graduating to the next level. And that doesn't mean I'm in a hurry to do it. Like I'm not, engaged in dangerous sports and all that kind of stuff, just hoping that I'll die, or, doing stupid things. Actually, I do stupid things occasionally, but not on purpose. I don't think, hey, this is really going to get me in trouble, so therefore I'll do it. But after I've done it, I go, wow, that was kind of stupid. So there's a difference. But this idea of not dying on a hill, I think is a woke expression. What hill are we ready to die on? If it's not the little things that go, it's too late. It's too late. Now look, I'm not a proponent of violence or anything, but at some point you've got to stand for something, or you'll fall for anything, right? Yeah, we all know that. But standing for something is dying on a hill. It's putting yourself out there. Sue, Sister Palmer, as we like to say, isn't it weird we call our wives, if we're married men in the church, we call our wives Sister Palmer. It's like, well, is that her? She has a name, it's Sue. But I was, for 3 years on the mission, we're so used to calling, she still calls me president once in a while. And I'm like, thank you, dear. And then she's like, what? You're not a president. I know. But that's the cool thing about sisters, is they're sisters forever and ever and ever. They don't have all these made up titles that men need. It's so funny. Anyway, Sue, Sister Palmer, every day I see her willing to die on a hill for something, for somebody. And it's good. It's a good thing. I don't know. That phrase is just driving me nuts because I hear it so often. Okay, so we finally get to hear about some flooding because it happened in New York. And if it doesn't happen in New York, particularly New York City, then it really didn't happen. I see that mentality a lot in the church in Utah. If it doesn't happen right here, then it's not happening. My goodness, over 3 inches of rain in an hour or something crazy like that. Historical, never seen before, floods in New York City. People drowning in their own basement apartments, drowning because the floods came so fast. And of course, this is the continuation of the once hurricane and tropical storm that came up through the south, and devastation. People waiting in gas lines for 5-6 hours and able to get like $20 worth, if that. Now look, guys, I promise you, not as a prophet, but just as a guy that studies and studies and studies prophecy, and I feel like I have a connection to the earth a little bit, just like most of you do that are outside at all, doing anything outside at all. You feel somewhat of a connection. Things just aren't quite right out there. Things are happening. In my opinion, this is the earth reacting and adjusting and telling us that she doesn't like what's going on right now. in the world, the wickedness. And the consequences of this are devastating in some places. So we don't even hear about Haiti, right? What happened there and what they're dealing with there. We've had this hurricane. We've had the situation in Afghanistan. Here's some news that a lot of people don't know about because it doesn't really get reported. But an Iranian drone attacked an airport in Saudi Arabia. Hello, people injured, a commercial plane damaged. So fortunately it wasn't, but this is really, really interesting because it's almost like the floodgates are starting to open literally. So we know a little bit about flash floods here in Utah, particularly in the South, in these slot canyons and whatnot. Been in some of those, not terrifying. I've talked to a few people that have actually gone through it. A friend of mine, Steve Wiscombe, this was years ago. He was in elementary school, and his family were down south, and the flood came, and he and his family spent a night in a tree. I think they had some really major devastation, as I recall. And I just remember him being kind of a somber guy after that. Crazy things happening. So we're used to these things, but where we have a flash flood in New York City, it should kind of trigger something. It should trigger something. And I know I'm all over the place, but the floodgates, that's where I was. The floodgates are opening, in my opinion, in the Middle East, because, whether you like Donald J. Trump or not, I think it's my opinion that other countries felt like he meant business. And they, particularly those that are aligned against Israel and aligned against the United States, I think he kept them in check. We never really heard much of ISIS after he became president. He basically eliminated it. And when was the first we heard about ISIS again? Last week, when 13 of our soldiers were murdered. And personally, ISIS, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, they're all over the place, switching back and forth. So I don't really give a lot of credence whether it was ISIS or not, although the Taliban did let the ISIS criminals out that were being held in Afghanistan. But whoever it was that did this, we heard the name of ISIS. Now that ought to raise an alarm. Now I'm not saying we should be fighting wars. I'm so glad we're out. So for that, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we are out. In my opinion, we should not be in there. Now I know that goes against a lot of conservative thought and people probably in and out of the church that have this idea that if we take care of it there, it won't come here and all that. But when we mix up with countries and individuals and tribes that have been fighting with each other for centuries and even millennials, right? Millennia. In my opinion, it never works out. And I also think a lot of this occupying these places has to do with lining the pockets of certain individuals and companies and whatnot. That's just my opinion, but so I'm glad we're out. I really am. How we did it was a disgrace and all that, but needless to say, the reputation of the United States now is not one of strength. It's just not. And so all of a sudden you have an Iranian drone hitting a Saudi Arabia airport? I don't know. I think there's more than a coincidence there. Of course, they started ramping things up. An Israeli merchant ship was targeted a few weeks ago. prior to the Afghan takeover, but still, they get the feel of things, in my opinion, that there isn't a strength there supporting Israel. Because really, when it all boils down, this all has to do with Israel. It really does. It's in the Bible, folks. It's in the Bible. Speaking of which, I had a great opportunity to teach in a care facility for elderly folks, a Bible class, a non-denominational Bible class. I was invited to teach that, and I had just a great time. I chose the topic of Old Testament prophecies of the Messiah of Jesus Christ, specifically Jesus Christ, and it was really, really fun. We had a few LDS, an Episcopal, which that's the American version of the Anglican Church or the Church of England, and then an evangelical, and it was awesome. We had a really, really good discussion, so that was really a treat for me. In Australia, this popped into my head. I think it was a couple of years ago. They did this, quote, buyback of guns, personal weapons. And basically, people just got on board and got rid of their weapons. And isn't it interesting? Of course, millions and millions of acres burned in Australia last year. I'm not equating those two. Devastation. And now look what's happened to that country. Individuals are going to have to be tracked now via an app on their phone of where they travel and what they do. They are in such serious lockdown over this virus. And if you think about it, what can they do? They're basically defenseless, just minions, just having to do whatever the government tells them to do. It's really, really interesting, the ramifications of people giving up just basic liberty and freedom. When they give it up, when they don't die on that hill, if you will, next thing you know, you're looking over your shoulder and you're done. It's over. Because was that really a hill you want to die on? Yes. The answer is yes. Oh my goodness. And so yeah, and so it goes. Closer to home, our home, St. George, 3 chapels torched, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint chapels. They caught the arson, and I'm telling you, that was the worst reporting I've ever seen. I watched 2 different news sources. They showed a burned up car, didn't indicate how the car got lit on fire, of the individual that they say, I gotta stop doing that, that they say was the arson, and they had a bit of a race up towards Zion, and I really haven't heard much of anything else. Probably the local news down in St. George has some better reporting. But this is very fishy. I immediately thought of someone retaliating against Elder Holland's great speech at BYU. Now, soon I commented, Sister Palmer and I commented on that talk, and Sister Palmer's take on it and my take was a bit too little too late, but agreed with the content of the talk. I think some people misinterpreted that. Sister Palmer did say, Sue, did say that the flood, did she use floodgates again, would open up in criticism, and that's not a bad thing, but what are we going to get out of that? We're just going to get the criticism and nothing changes. Everything still stays the same down at BYU. The quick guy, I can never remember his name, He's got the radio voice and the looks. He's a really good show. He pounded on this because he's been covering, the CRT and everything for quite some time. And his take, I wanted to hear his take on Elder Holland's talk. And, he said that his worry is that if it doesn't get fixed in BYU, it's going to end up in the general church population. And I'm like, dude, it's already there. It's been there for quite some time, particularly in the circles I run in or have. I don't run in any circles anymore. I run in circles, but they're my own. I'm not connected with anybody anymore. But this academia, elitist mentality of I'm pretty smart, I know things that you don't know, and let me help you out kind of thing. It's infiltrated everything. So if you're thinking that there's still a chance that you can stop it at BYU before it infiltrates the regular church population, I'm telling you, it's too late. That's like closing the barn door after the cows got out or the horses or whatever. Yeah, so it's there. I've talked about it before. We have, I'm looking over some books that I have, and I've talked about it. And, it's, go down to Deseret Book and you can find a lot of this kind of philosophy. And then, the general membership reads and devours those books. And next thing you know, it's being taught in priesthood and Relief Society and Sunday school and of course, church education system, BYU, I don't know what they call it now. Anyway, it's all infiltrated there. The normal guy that just studies the scripture in the church, in my opinion, is looked down upon. We have to go to the paid source to really know what the scriptures mean. And I think that's bull, in my opinion. I just don't buy that. We're all blessed that are baptized with the gift of the Holy Ghost if we live worthy of it, and we can receive enlightenment and understanding. And it's so fascinating to me how these intellectuals treat Joseph Smith, because it's so hard for them, and they have to just make up all these kind of different crazy things because Joseph Smith was uneducated, and the Lord came to him and the Father, and when he was young, and so all the narratives about education and having money, prestige, being tenured, all these things, it means nothing. It means nothing. And the Lord goes to who he wants to go to create a great work. And usually it's the simple. It's the simple. That's what he did here on this earth when he had his earthly ministry, right? The intellectuals, those were the ones that he really blasted the most. He really did. Vipers. Oh, man. Okay, so I really want some of these guys that used to do the timelines, for the second coming to come out of the woodwork again. I'm personally not a timeline guy, but I like hearing from those that are. There were several that popped up when we had the earthquake, the windstorms, the beginning of the virus. We had all these things, toilet paper shortages, and it was awesome. And I really enjoyed those. I'd like to see a rejuvenation of those. I'm not the guy that does that. It's so funny, and I've said this before, I'll hear a timeline and watch it and go, wow, that's so cool how they put all that together. And then if somebody asks me, well, explain it to me, I'll go, I can't. Watch this video. But I think it's important, not necessarily to live by those timelines, but what it does is it gets our minds thinking, and it focuses on the scriptures, because every timeline is attached to scriptures or events that have happened either in our church history or in scripture, in the Bible, or the Book of Mormon, or the Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl of Great Price. So it connects us. So I would love to see these individuals update, redo, put the same one out again, maybe just repeat, you know. I love it. Now, sometimes they're a little bit too mathematical for me, and number driven, mostly from the book of Daniel, but that's okay. For me, I love to hear of events that this was fulfilled. Perhaps this prophecy was fulfilled, and this indicates that this is the timeline that we're in. Those are the kind of things I like. So I'm if anybody listens to this, or that does a timeline, or those of you that know who I'm talking about, if you could get on their channels again and say, hey, we're ready for another wake up here. I really think things are escalating, and the Middle East is just crazy insane there. Here's an interesting, you can look this up, but the resurgence of those in Israel that are being hospitalized and are sick are those that have received the vaccine. Interesting, huh? So there you have it. I think now I'm going to go back to the announcement that, oh, I got to stop doing that. The announcement that that we had a couple of weeks ago from the First Presidency. A comment on my YouTube channel of an individual, I think, really nailed it. The comment was, the reason it just doesn't sit right is that it's the same talking points in that announcement are the same thing that we hear from government and from the world, from the CDC, WHO, whatever. And we always think in our head that what we're going to hear from the church is not of the world, that it's that we're going to get direction that is going to offend the world, versus go right lock, stock, and barrel. That's a gun term. Lock, stock, and barrel of the phrases and everything that the world does. We're hearing that exact same thing, and so it's like, oh, that. And when he said that, I went, that's it, that's exactly it. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't times that the church and the government is going to be together on something. I'm not saying that, but when the verbiage and everything is that made many of us feel like, ooh, like, and so that's why many of us are sorting through that. Okay, so it's not an attack on the First Presidency. It's not an attack on our beliefs of the restored gospel through the prophet Joseph. It's not an attack on how we feel about President Nelson being our prophet and the leader of the church. We're processing that. So these things are happening on such a regular basis now that you're still trying to process one event or one thing, and then another one comes, and this one still hasn't quite been figured out here, and then another one comes. That's the time we're living in, and that's the time prophesied right prior to Christ coming. It's called turmoil. That's what turmoil is, in my opinion, is not having time to process crazy events that are one after another, after another, after another. When things aren't in turmoil, doesn't mean that you don't have difficult things happen. It's just they're spaced out. And you have time to work through one, and then another one comes, and that's just kind of a rhythm that is life. It's mortality. But when this is here, and this one's here, and this one's here, and they're all in the process of trying to be figured out in our hearts and in our minds, then things can get a little interesting. And that's why I think our prophet, President Nielsen, has said that we have to rely on the constant influence on the Holy Ghost, or we won't survive spiritually because of that. Because what the Holy Ghost does is he allows us, he gives us that peace and that comfort to do the processing. Because without that, it's basically turmoil. So without that constant influence of going, okay, there's that one, okay, there's that one, okay, there's that one, it can be overwhelming. Depression, anxiety is way on the rise, way on the rise. There are so many medications out there, so many medications that deal with all this stuff. And the side effects of those medications require other medications. And it seems like a vicious cycle. Now look, I'm not a doctor, so don't listen to me as far as whether you should do all that, the medication or not. What I'm saying is that when we live in trying times, there's an increase in anxiety and depression among the people. And that's the era that we're living in now. So we have we have two things going on, in my opinion. If you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you have all those things that are going on within that organization, and then the world as well. And this kind of complicates things sometimes. So when we know of the difficulties at BYU, and we hear an apostle address the issues, and then 3 churches get torched in St. George, and you have apostasy that's going on. You have the LGBTQ plus in situation that's always just kind of heating up within the church. Troy Abels had a really good in Last Dispensation had an awesome interview. Wasn't really an interview. It was just 4 guys just going for it, talking. Kwaku, and I can't remember the other guys' names, but I've been on with Kwaku a couple of times with Troy. But they really talked about these issues, and it's fascinating to see from these younger people that, in my opinion, really get to the heart of things really, really quick, where academia has taken out the uniqueness of our church. Everything is milquetoast. Everything is just milquetoast. That's another thing. I used to stay with my grandparents when I was a kid, and every night they'd have warm milk and bread soaked in there before they went to bed, and they'd have me eat it. I was like, this is not good. So when I hear the phrase milk toast, it's like, it's so yucky and, and bland and soaky bread. I mean, and they just loved it. And it just, I think it calmed them down and they were able to sleep, I guess. I don't know. To me, I just was like, ugh. But milk toast, watered down to where we have no uniqueness. Well, what do we stand for? What hill do we die on? And you know what? I'm going to die on several hills. I am. And I'm willing to die on several hills because I think that's the time period that we're living in. And all I'm hearing is that really the hill you want to die on? And I say, yes. And I'm going to say yes every time. Yeah. Now, when it comes to the gospel, when it comes to freedom, when it comes to liberty, yeah, I'm going to die on that hill. I'm going to die on that hill. So the last 6-8 months, we've had a new president of the United States. Are we better off now than we were? I don't know about you, but I'm paying a lot more in gas. I think we're going to see shortages. I think we're going to see a huge increase in gas prices. I think food shortages. I've said this before, guys. I just feel like we need to wake up. We point to the South, we point to the East Coast, and I'm talking the United States, and we go, well, yeah, they had bad weather, and so, you know, it's understandable that they would have these things. Well, guess what? We're one storm away from the same thing. We're one earthquake away from the same thing. We're one trucker strike from the same thing. We're one gas shortage for whatever political reason from the same thing. So let's just look around and see some of the things that we can do to prepare. Personally, I think the basics: food, water, shelter, and some form of power. Some form of power. If you're in a one-bedroom apartment in a high-rise, you can do some very, very basic things. This is a little solar battery, and I use this all the time. It can charge my cell phone and one other thing. It has 2 outlets, and it's awesome. And if that's all you can afford, they're not very much money. 4 Patriots is where I got that. I think they're great. I actually, this costs a little bit of money, but this is like my favorite thing. But this is a G-Shock. This watch is. I told my wife after being, halfway through the mission, I said, "Gosh, I feel like I've lost my man card. I don't hunt, fish, hike. I don't do anything other than this great work," and it is. But I said, I need something to get my man card back. This is what she got me. And this bad boy, it's solar powered, gives me altitude, barometer, all that stuff. I can actually read it. It's big enough. It looks good on my wrist. And this thing has been, I had it with me up in the winds. I just love it. I'm not saying to go get that. I'm just saying it's nice because it's solar powered, You want to look at those kind of things. If you can afford it, just get a case of water just to have on hand, or 2, You don't have, the Lord qualifies. Was it Elder Holland probably who said the Lord loves effort, I think. Yeah. Just a little bit. It doesn't, I'm not talking, I told you guys about when we went to Belize and those people survived the hurricane that was so devastating to that little Ambergris Key, St. Saint something. I can't remember the name of the town, but on Ambergris Key. And they had little tiny bags of rice and beans that they had collectively as a branch held. And they survived on that because they couldn't evacuate. And then no power, no services, no nothing. They had some rice and beans. So if that's all you can do, awesome. You'll be great. I would always be learning things. Okay, so here's a cool thing. I've been trying to be a little more domestic. This will show my chauvinistic side, but other than when I was on my mission, since married life, I really never washed clothes, and I feel bad about that. And it wasn't that I felt like I was above it or anything. It's just Sue did it. She just did it. And wash and dry. And I was always grateful to have all that done. I never, I'd thank her. I was grateful for it, but I don't know, I had things too, going on too. So it's not like I was just sitting around going, gosh, thanks dear for doing all the laundry. Can you get me something to eat? And could you move a little bit? I'm watching the show. It wasn't like that, okay? But for whatever reason, so anyway, I'm washing clothes and not ironing. I don't do that, but I wash them and I dry them, fold them, right? It's hardly anything to iron anymore. It's kind of nice. Especially if you get them out of the dryer fast enough and get them on a hanger. But anyway, I had done something and the dryer didn't work, and there was this code that said CL, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And we had a dinner engagement. We were with one of Sue's high school friends. We had a great time with that. But anyway, so I couldn't fix it then, and so we go to the dinner, we come back, and I'm like, I got it. And Sue goes, well, we're going to have to, get the repairman here. We got to have this dryer. And I said, okay, let me see if I can figure it out, and CL, I thought, clean. It's got to be the vent, so, the lint trap, right? Every time you got to do it. And I've been doing it. Well, maybe I missed a few times because you take the lint thing out, collector, and inside there was a bunch of lint still in there. And so, man, I got in there with some little sticks and I pulled out the lint and got the vacuum in there. I pulled the dryer out, took the flexible hose off and cleaned all that out, cleaned the vent out. I got everything done, and doggone it, that thing didn't reset. I unplug it, plug it back in, nothing, still that thing, that fault code, CL, haunting me. And I just went, YouTube. And after a few videos that didn't help me, I found one that did. And there's a little button down there, and it's child lock, CL, child lock. Somehow I had done something to trigger that. YouTube saved my life. Not my life. YouTube made me look like a man in front of my wife, who is my life. And she was like, gosh, honey, you did it. I was like, yeah, pretty cool. So anyway, that was a long story to get to. Always just be learning little things. I'm like, I know a lot about a lot of things. I know a little, sorry, I don't know a lot. I know a little about a lot of things, just enough to be a little dangerous. But I generally can find what I need. Now, I'm not the handiest person in the world, and I love people that are and call on them. I'm one that does that, I had to have some garage door work done, and I was like, I'm not getting up there. I saw a friend of mine in Park City almost lose his arm trying to work on a garage door. I was like, nah, not doing that. I don't hang Christmas lights, not doing that. So there's a few things, right? But some of the things we can just kind of try to figure out. There's a great satisfaction, fulfillment, and if you can look like you're pretty cool to somebody, that's an added bonus to the deal. All this does is it gives you more liberty and more freedom, and as well as a little bit of knowledge can go a long ways when crap hits the fan, right? When shiz hits the fan, and I'm talking about the Book of Mormon guy, shiz, right? Always, when I say shiz, always the guy in the Book of Mormon. So when things like that happen, instead of panic, which is, let me tell you, I've been around people that have panicked in situations, and there's something about just practicing by these kind of events, just like the dryer thing or whatever, by just taking the time, think it out, don't panic. We'll see what happens, and we'll try this and we'll try that, and we'll see what we can do. What that does to the mind is it calms it down when something, a dryer going out is nothing, right? But if something that really is something happens, you've already kind of trained your mind to just methodically calm down and start thinking of ways to solve what's happening. There's I think I've mentioned this before. There's a book called Endurance, and it's by, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's about Shackleton, who made the Antarctic, across the Antarctic. Early 1900s, these guys are crazy. You had Byrd and Edmondson, Shackleton, all these guys, doing these crazy things, explorers, British explorers, National Geographic guys. So there was a guy that paid tribute to Shackleton, and I can't get it exactly right, but it was something like, for swift and efficient travel, give me Scott. For something else, give me Edmondson. But when you're in a real fix, when it looks like there's no way out, get on your knees and pray for Shackleton. And I've always loved that, because I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that when shiz hits the fan, people go, hey, he might know what to do, or he might have this that could help, or he's got a good joke, maybe that'll lighten the mood, just something like that, versus being the person that when it hits the fan, you don't want to be around. And we all know those kind of folks too. We all have different gifts and abilities. We all can't be everything to all people, and God recognizes that. He knows our uniqueness. So let's explore our uniqueness and get good at it, because we're all going to be needed when it happens. And I think we've just been in this kind of protective bubble here where I'm living, and I'm looking around and seeing all this stuff going on throughout the world, but right here in the United States, and I'm going, it's coming. Let's get ready. So let's die on that hill. I love you all, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.